Are you ready to challenge yourself and think bigger? I'm your host, Marianne Marchese, and together we'll hear the unfiltered, unscripted stories of those who've taken big risks and transformed their bold ideas into reality. Season 1 is brought to you by multi-award-winning law firm Legalite, where bold ideas thrive. You know when you hear about an idea and you wonder, how in the hell has this not been done before? Well, that's the Laundry Lady for you, the world's first online marketplace for laundry services. And I'm here with Susan Toft, the founder. Susan's story started from her spare room while juggling motherhood and has grown into a thriving national network of laundry ladies and lads, empowering hundreds with flexible work and reducing the mental load for families across Australia. Susan, I'm so excited to be chatting to you.
Thank you for having me. I'm excited to be here.
Susan, you left behind your corporate career to start the Laundry Lady. What was the inspiration for that idea?
Well, I think I was a new mum and, like many new mums, I was really struggling with being in a corporate career and becoming a mum and trying to balance everything. I was traveling a lot for work and I, really just wanted to be able to have something that had a bit more flexibility to be there with my kids. And one day I was walking past my spare room and looking at my pile of clothes piled high and thinking about how much I needed a service like this to help me in my corporate career. And at the same time thinking, well, maybe I could create it in a way that it could become this, flexible business model that could provide that opportunity to be able to have a flexible work from home. So it was something that was so different to what I had been doing, working in government and corporate roles in marketing for a long time and then going and doing laundry. But the idea of it, once it started to roll, just really took hold. And before I knew it, I had a logo and a brand and it was happening.
And now an empire.
Now very different.
You mentioned that you were juggling motherhood and you started the business as a mother of young, was it one child at the time or did you have the two?
Yeah, I just had my eldest who was just a little 3-year-old then. He's now a 16-year-old grumpy teenager. And I've got an 11-year-old now as well. But yeah, at that time, I just had him and it's definitely such a, I think for any woman who has had a big career before they, become a parent, it's such a challenge to decide how you're going to juggle what that looks like, in the next phase of your life. And still now it's still a juggle of how do I juggle that in this phase of my life. So, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. And what did those early days look like for you when you were just starting the business?
So they were so joyful. I would just, I would go out and do the pickups in my local area and I would take it home and wash it and iron it and take it back to the customer the next day. And I knew all my customers by name. I knew, everything about them. And it was, the thing that I love, it was so different to anything I'd done before because I'd never worked in a physical kind of job before, but I just absolutely loved the freedom and flexibility that it gave me. Being out of my car, driving and visiting customers was just, so satisfying at that time of my life. And my second son, when he was born, the day he was born, I was actually doing ironing and had to get someone else to drop the ironing to the customer because I was in hospital with him. But, and then, going out and picking up my customers after he was born and they'd all come over and see and have a chat to him and in the car and all of those sorts of things. So it was such a different time in my life. And, I know like we've got a lot of laundry ladies and lads who are in that era now and working in that space. And I just, love that it's giving them that same kind of freedom and flexibility to go and be that and be there with your kids and have that more kind of, experience where you can have that flexibility.
Yeah. It sounds like a beautiful community that you created around that time as well of your customer and your client base. Sounds like it was local to you at the time and you've obviously expanded since then, which I'll chat about. And just that idea that your customers got to know you as a person and, hear or I guess both ways, you hear their stories about their families and they hear your stories. Was that very intentional for you to create that sense of community with this business?
Oh, I don't know that I had a lot of intention in the beginning. I just wanted to do something where I had flexibility. But it was definitely a learning along the way of, that people love that connection and love the community. And a lot of it, it was never really about laundry. It was about what it gave to people and having that chat and connection at the door with our customers was really special. What was, kind of really crazy was when we got to the point where we started bringing on customers that I didn't know anymore because, the business had sort of outgrew that stage, and we started bringing in new customers and then bringing in contractors that I don't know anymore and all of those sorts of things, because I think when you start from the ground up, you know every part of it, and at some point you don't. So, yeah, it's been a crazy experience.
And is that what prompted that step to expand, the fact that your demand was starting to outweigh what you could physically offer within the Gold Coast area at the time?
Yeah, look, I think when I first started it, I always kind of had a little bit of an idea that maybe it would be some kind of scalable model. I didn't really know what that would look like then, and I didn't have any clear plan and strategy in place around how that was going to happen. And it did take a few years to get to that point, but I always, really felt like that was what the business was going to be about, was getting to a stage where it could be this opportunity for other people to come into that, same kind of work environment. But yeah, you've got to, I think there's a lot to be said about getting in and doing it yourself in the beginning, because you learn so much more about it. You learn more about your customers, and a lot of that information is what helps us now in building the business, because I had that knowledge from that, on the ground kind of level in the beginning that I can now, put into our model and how we scale.
So I guess you used that, did you, to scale the model? All those learnings documented, the systems?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like our whole knowledge base now and training programs and everything all comes from that period of time of understanding the customer and all of those things, which, I think is really valuable in developing a business and understanding, exactly who your customers are and all of those kinds of things. So, yeah, it was definitely, I know people get really upset that they get stuck working in the business sometimes, but I think it definitely can have value as well. And so it's, use it to your advantage.
Well, I think when you know the business from literally the ground up, you're the best positioned person to scale that business and to grow that business, because you know how to do every job in the business. You wear all the hats, and I really love that you did document that and use that as the knowledge base. Was that something that came naturally to you to know to do that, or did you receive any insights or tips that if you want to scale, you should be documenting everything?
Yeah, look, I think, working in some bigger, corporations. So I worked for Australian Trade Commission for a long time, which is, over 1,000 employees all over the world in all different countries, and you definitely see, a different side of business in that kind of environment in terms of how, structures and systems and processes and how important they are to a business. And I think when you get to that kind of size scale, you start to see a lot of, different things. Like there were lots of different silos and things like that would happen within our organisation. And so that was something that was a really good learning for me through my career. I think that I just naturally, was always very driven by having processes and systems in place. And, I really wish that when I had started, there had been tools like ChatGPT in place, because I feel like those systems and processes would have been created so much more effectively and efficiently, and I would have got so much more done faster in the beginning around that if I'd had those tools. But yeah, now we've just got what we've got.
Yeah, but you did it all without AI, so hats off to you. It's a different time.
Different times.
So talk me through that very next step when you expanded outside of the Gold Coast. Did you start from the get-go as a franchise model?
So we're not actually a franchise model, we're a contractor model. So we have independent contractors who work for us. And we decided to go with that model rather than a franchising model because we wanted to have a really low startup cost and easy access for our contractors to join us, because a lot of them are women who might be in situations where they don't have a lot of money, or they might be escaping, situations where they need to get work really quickly. And so we're really passionate about being able to do that for them without them having to invest, huge dollars that a franchising model would have. So that was the idea. And obviously, at the time there was a lot of things coming in place like Uber and all of those sort of styles of platforms, which also helped to really shape the model of what the business became. And so in the beginning, I had no platform for booking and scheduling or anything like that. I just had this idea that I was going to, turn it into this scalable model. And I had applied for a grant through Queensland Government, which was an amazing $5,000. And I took that $5,000 to my digital developer and said, I want this Uber style platform. And he kind of laughed at me and said, I think you need to come up with something that's sort of off the shelf, because you're not going to have any kind of budget to create that, which, at the time I didn't really know what an off the shelf kind of platform was, but I went out and researched that and found a whole lot of scheduling and payment tools that I could use that I could patch together what my, idea was. And so I did that. And once I had that all, ready and live, it was then just trying to find the contractors to join. And so the first 4 contractors I found were over the Gold Coast. So that was where I was living at the time. And I decided to find people to help cover that area. And then over time, started to, expand that out into Brisbane and throughout southeast Queensland, and into the Sunshine Coast where I live now. So by that stage, I think we had maybe around 12 or so contractors. But I was also I had gone back to full-time work because I was trying to juggle being a single mum and being, life with 2 kids and all of those sorts of things. And so I went back to work and kind of parked the business as a bit of a side hustle, not parked it, kept it going, but kept it going as a side hustle so that, with that goal to kind of be able to expand, but not really sure exactly how I was going to finance that.
Oh, wow. That's so interesting. So did you become a single mother during that time, like after the business had started?
Yeah. So it was around the time where I was just starting to develop a scalable model. So before that, it had just been me. And that's when, I went back and needed to get some extra income to help with all of the expenses of that and rebuilding my life and all of those kinds of things. And I knew that, this business could have legs, but I knew I needed to have a little bit of have no debt behind me and things like that. So I needed to go back and get ready for all of those things. But then, it's really hard. And I know a lot of people who start a business have this struggle of how do you balance getting an income while you're trying to build a business, and find time to do that. And it was really, really hard. Like in those days, I probably only had, 3 hours a week where I could spend on the business and find some, and spend that recruiting people or turning some ads on or, doing the finances and those sorts of things. And I really didn't know how I was going to come back to it full time. But then COVID hit and that was kind of the opportunity forced again because my events job had come to an end. So it was my time to really reevaluate and come back and say, it's now or never. The systems and processes are here. The business is, got legs for what it can do. I'm still really passionate about what it could build. And now it's, time to take it to the next level.
Yeah, that is really amazing that you didn't shelf it. You kept it there. You kept nurturing it whilst you built up, as you said, rebuilt your life and were earning an income. Was COVID then when it hit, was that really positive for the business in terms of the uptake of laundry services?
Yeah, well, I mean, at that stage, the business was so small, and I wasn't really spending a lot of time on it. So it was a positive in terms of my time. My time came back to it, and I took a lot of time during the very first lockdown when we were still sitting there watching Tiger King and all of those things and working out what was going on in the world.
Take me back to Tiger King.
Oh my goodness! But I remember just sitting down during that period and writing my values, and that was really a very strong moment in terms of this is really what I want to do and what I want to commit to. I don't want to go back and work for someone else again. I want to build this and bring it to the level where I think it could always have been. It was definitely the moment of having my commitment to it and having my time to it that made the big difference after COVID. But it was also, there were some really cool things that happened during that period. Like we decided that we were, it was just me then. I decided that I would, my first expansion out of Queensland would be into Melbourne because I thought there wasn't very many lockdowns in Melbourne at the time.
We didn't have enough.
And so I thought it's going to grow faster there than anywhere else. We'll start with Melbourne. One of the really special things was we probably hired maybe 10 or 20 contractors from Melbourne in that period. And for them, it gave them the reason that legally they were allowed to leave their house because they, once the lockdowns really did start leaving, they weren't allowed to unless it was for essential work. And laundry is an essential work. We have a lot of customers who can't do their laundry on their own, like people who are living with a disability, elderly, things like that. So even though we have a lot of business customers as well who were closed during that period, there's still a lot of residential customers who needed our support. And so those contractors who signed up during that period, it was this beautiful experience for them to have something that they could be connected to, leave their house, have some kind of purpose that they could be part of, and start building that way. So, so that was the first kind of start of the expansion just after lockdowns.
That would have been so meaningful for them. I'm a Melburnian, and there was one point where our lockdowns, we had a 5-kilometre radius rule. You couldn't go outside of 5 kilometres of your home. And I remember I accidentally once drove outside of the 5 kilometres, and I felt like I was like an escapee from prison. I was just panicking trying to get back home. So to have, a reason that you could get out there, because we really could not. We were so restricted. Must have been just an absolute lifeline for so many people during that time.
Yeah. So such a crazy part of the experience. But, at that point it was still just me, as in me in the head office. But yeah, it was a pretty special kind of year and part of the journey. And then, since then, that was 5 years ago now, and things have really just gone in a crazy skyrocket direction.
Yeah, it really does seem that way. And you've been recognised in so many awards, too many to mention. You're on Shark Tank. And you have spoken a little bit about, how tough those early years were. But for the people that do see that highlight reel and, see all the successes, which are completely well-earned and so valid, what were some challenges, I guess, or frustrations, things that you felt let down by when you were building this business?
Yeah, look, I think in the last 5 years, it's definitely been a totally different growth journey. And, it was originally bringing people into my head office team and then building that team. So we're now 10 people. We're soon going to be 15 people. So that has lots of challenges along the way, building all of those things. But it's definitely been, doing it as a bootstrapped business. So I never had any money to put into it. Single mom, I had to be able to feed my kids. So, I really didn't have any kind of money to be able to invest into the growth of the business. And as we were starting to really start to see traction as we were putting on more contractors and getting them customers, it was really hard to push that faster without having any money behind you. And so it meant being incredibly scrappy, and I've got that mentality now that I don't think will ever leave me in terms of, how to build in that kind of environment. And with no technology, which we didn't have any, we were still using that off the shelf platform, and we knew we were kind of outgrowing that really quickly as well as we were starting to scale fast and getting a lot more attention on the business. And that was really, a really time resource kind of thing that was happening for the scaling. And so we had to really find a way to solve that, which we finally did, because we created our own platform. But that was really only went live 18 months ago. So in a lot of ways, I feel like we're still a 18-month-old startup, not a business that's has 13 years of journey. So
yeah, you feel back in startup mode. And that's Time Boss
yes.
is that Time Boss that you're referring to?
Yeah, Time Boss is our platform. So it manages the entire business, particularly for our contractors. We really focused heavily on the initial development of that platform for our contractors. So it manages everything that they do in their business, from how they invoice, how the payments work, all of those sorts of things, and scheduling and online bookings and things like that. And at the moment, we're building the next phase of that, which will be an app and, a better customer experience as part of that. So that was an essential part of the growth. We really had completely outgrown what we were doing with using, patched together off-the-shelf systems. And I think, the more businesses I talk to, it's such a pain point for everyone, whether you've got money behind you or not. It's, the tech can be a pain point in your growth. And so, getting on top of that was a big change in the business. And now we've been able to become a lot more operationally efficient, which is really setting us up to scale and go international, which, now we're going to be a whole new startup again in Canada very, very soon.
Yeah, incredible. And tell me a little bit more about developing that technology. So obviously there was nothing on the market that you could tap into that suited where you were as a business at that time. How did you even begin? I mean, you obviously are the type of person that sees a gap and you're like, I'm just going to build this myself. You did it with the laundry lady and then you're doing it with Time Boss. But how did you even know where to start? Because technology, again, is a totally different world to what you've been a part of.
I'm a non-tech founder, which is a whole learning journey in itself. I always had that goal, like right from the very beginning when I went and first had that meeting with the designer of, this is the platform I wanted. Like it's not really all that different to what that meeting was then of what it does now. But it's, it just takes time and resources, and you've got to find the right people to help you do it, but you got to have the money to pay for it as well. And it was the money that held it back for so long. I did things like accessed grants wherever I could to help us, find the right developers to get that started. We be scrappy in the business so that we could put every cent we could towards it. And so we finally found a developer who is just local, who was happy to work on a retainer, which was amazing because I couldn't afford, the big amounts that it would have cost to create a platform, like what we're still trying to build, from scratch. And so he and I, it was just he and I working alongside each other in the beginning of, in the first year of me saying this is what I wanted to do, and him creating those things, the solutions for that. Now it's become, a whole team behind that, and I've got an operations manager who manages that team, and so, it's a whole different journey now, and that again will develop and grow as we grow as well, because we've got to continually invest in that and make that, it's the heart of how the business will grow.
It's going to scale. Yeah. And did I read that you were thinking of rolling it out potentially to other businesses and other industries?
Yeah, We've certainly built it in a way that that's an option for future. At the moment, so last year we decided to raise investment so that we could really invest in developing the technology further and also taking the business internationally. And raising investment, particularly as a woman, and particularly as a business that's not, pure deep tech, it is really, really difficult. And so it took a lot longer in the journey to raise that investment than I would have hoped. And
tell me a bit more
a lot
about
of learnings
that
along the way. Yes, so much to share about that. But
Please.
I think one of the things that I really, learned in that process was, one of the things that came out of that was, what is the business going to be focused on now? Is it going to be, could we, create this tech that we sell into other industries, or would it be something where we really, focus on going international? And in the end, after we did get the investment, both myself and our investors did feel really strongly that, there's a lot of legs just in laundry. So we're going to really focus heavily on getting laundry, on a global scale and going into international markets. And I think because my background is in international markets, that's something I'm really excited and passionate about. So that's going to be our primary focus for the next few years. Beyond that, potentially we might bring the tech into other industries, but at this stage it's really just very focusing heavily on laundry.
Yeah, brilliant. And you said Canada is your first market that you'll crack, and you're traveling there, aren't you, later this month?
Yeah, we're just 3 weeks out from launch at the moment, so we're a little bit scrambling to get through that period, which is exciting and a bit terrifying about the amount of work we've got to do in the next few weeks, but we're excited for that. So so we've got a plan in place and some people in place to help us in the Canadian market. So we're really, really excited to get there and bring the business to Canada. Next year we're looking at the UK, and we'll see beyond that what other markets might be a good fit for us. So we're thinking that all through at the moment.
Do you find that you take that next growth journey quite organically, or are you very much, I guess, kind of, where you want to go and where you want to be, and then you start working towards that? Or has it unfolded a bit more organically?
I think it's a bit of both. I think we're definitely moving a bit more into, strategy as well now around what, where and why. But, it is organically as well. But it's also just, I think I'm always on to the next thing before I finish the last thing. So, so much that I want to achieve with this business. So it's just, continually, jumping ahead and running with all of those things to get to the next stage is exciting.
Yeah. And with the expansion into Canada, what prompted Canada as the next choice? Was there demand coming out of there?
Yeah, look, Canada, I think, is very aligned to us in terms of our values as a country and what, we value as a business as well. For us, that staying true to providing flexibility and freedom and what we can provide to our contractors is super important to us, and we want to make sure that as we grow and scale that is at the heart of everything that we do, because that's our niche and that's who we are. And so we felt like the Canadian market would be very aligned to that, and we see a lot of opportunity there, not a lot of competition and all of those kinds of things. So, so we're excited to get into that market.
Brilliant. And you mentioned the capital raise. So you raised around $1 million?
We did, yes.
I mean, it sounds like a lot of money, but it is also pretty modest, I feel, for a business that wants to achieve global success and international expansion. And you did say before that you're quite scrappy. Was that a very conscious decision, the amount that you wanted to raise and how you were going to go about that?
It was very much a learning experience over the course of a year in terms of where the market's at and what and how we fit into that. So I knew that we needed at least that to be able to sort of push us to the next level. But also we could have continued to run the business without any investment and continue to grow, just not at as fast a pace. So it definitely is helping, and I've definitely felt that already just in the last sort of 3 or 4 months since we've had that deal completed. It really is just helping to push the business forward so much faster, which is a great place to be in after years of trying to do things as fast as possible on a very scrappy budget. So potentially and quite likely we might raise again in future, particularly if the international markets go well, because that will really help to drive those even faster. But yeah, it's we've certainly learned a lot about how to run the business without the investment as well. So I think that is definitely helpful. But yeah, we ended up getting around 650 of that through angel investors, and the rest of it came through government funding, because it was really, really difficult to find the investment. But one of the great things was that the business was already at a good valuation, so it hasn't, and this was the first investment in the business, so it hasn't meant giving out a huge amount of equity at this stage, which does mean we can potentially look at raising again in the future. So I remember actually I went to South by Southwest last year, this time last year, and saw Melanie from Canva speak. Yes. Melanie, she was talking about, and she put up a slide of Canva's raises, and their first raise was very, very comparable in size. Wow. And type of investors as what ours was. So wow. I was like, well, there's hope for us.
Yeah, the writing's on the wall. Literally. Would you recommend to other founders to take a very similar approach to that in terms of only raising what you need and looking at, you've diversified where those funds have come from? Would you recommend?
I would recommend don't raise at all until you absolutely have to, or until you actually don't need it at all, because I think there's a lot of value. And look, I think there's different types of businesses. There's obviously, deep tech businesses that absolutely need funding, that they can't get off the ground without it. But there's a lot of businesses that are, more a style like ours that think they want to raise investment. I think get out and go and do it first. Go and work out if you've actually even got customers who want what you're selling to start with. I think that's probably the first mistake a lot of businesses make, that they think they create something and get investment and no one actually wants it. So get in and see if they want it, and just get started with what you can and how you can, and learn along the way, and think about investment later. I don't think that really for a lot of businesses should be part of the first part of the strategy. Depending on what type of business you're trying to build, of course, but that's my feeling. But it's definitely a learning, and I think also I was definitely at the right point in time of needing, of being ready for the investment. If I'd have raised earlier, it might have looked really different in terms of how that would have gone down, what I would have done with that, what that would have looked like. I think getting to this point of having a business for, like at this phase, 5 years before we got investment, it really helped to, make us a business that can really operate on our own legs before we even think about getting outside money in to help. But I definitely always recommend to people who are in early startup stages to look at grants and other ways that you can get money as well, rather than just from investors, because they're also very valuable. They can be also very time consuming and getting, on board, but they can be really helpful. They've certainly been helpful in our growth journey.
What kind of grants did you end up getting? Was that through the Queensland government or local community?
So this investment, we had Advance Queensland, and they have a female founders co-investment fund, which is they don't take any equity, and they invest up to $200,000 into female-led businesses. So that was an amazing.
That is brilliant.
Grant. Yeah, it's an amazing grant.
Hope the Victorian Premier is listening to this episode.
Yes. So that was $200,000, and then we also got money through the Export Market Development Grant, which is through Austrade for helping businesses go into international markets. So that's helping us into our international expansion.
Oh, that is so brilliant, and the fact that they don't take equity as well, it just gives you that freedom and flexibility to scale the business the way that you want to, which you're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And, lots of support along the way too, which is amazing. But they're nice, big, fat grants, but in the beginning, they're not the ones that you'll probably be going for. It's the $5,000 and $10,000 grants are just as valuable when you're in those early days.
Startup stages.
I accessed all those ones that we could as they've come out. So I think it's always staying up to date with what there is available and getting in to access that, even if they're not money, even if they're just actually putting you through a program or, support in that way. I think that's incredibly valuable.
And accelerators and things. Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely. People always ask me, what kind of advice would I have liked at the beginning, and it would definitely be going to an accelerator program. There wasn't a lot of that kind of thing around when I was very first starting back, 12, 13 years ago, and certainly not the way that it is now and easily accessible as it is now. And I would have even had no idea really how to even tap into that. But I think that would have, if I'd have been in a program like that at the beginning, I think that would have been a completely different growth story for the business.
Do you think it would have fast-tracked your growth?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I think I would have got to that stage of scaling and having confidence in scaling and what that might look like a lot sooner, having input around all of those types of things. I've been doing a lot more of those kind of programs now, which is almost too late because it's, I've kind of already learned so much along the way, and it's been great to, talk through some of those things with experts and things and get guidance. But again, it's also like, well, we're already doing all of that. So that this would have been really useful information to know 10 years ago. So I definitely recommend doing something along those lines.
Well, it certainly seems like you've got that confidence now to scale, and I'm really excited to see how Canada pans out and the UK. Hopefully, I'm sure it will be a success. Before we wrap up, I'd love to know, what's one piece of advice you have for someone who has a bold idea of their own?
I would say just get started. Don't, second guess it and think, someone else might do this or someone else could do it better, or I don't know what I'm doing. Neither does the next person, and anyone who's done it before, they were exactly where you are now that they didn't know either. So I think, we can be our own worst enemy in terms of holding ourselves back. So just get started. Just get started and see what works. And like we were saying before, like don't think you've got to have the whole solution worked out from the beginning. Just get in there and get started and do a couple of things and see what works. If someone likes it, and if they do, then go to the next stage and go from there.
Brilliant advice, and you obviously practice what you preach.
Yes. Sometimes I might need to pull back on that and not start so many things.
And where can people find you and the Laundry Lady?
Yeah, so laundrylady.com.au is our website. You can book online and check out all the services that are in your local area. We are all over Victoria, so they can, customers can definitely book in and save themselves some time getting their laundry done. And if you want to connect with me, I'm on LinkedIn, and connect with me there.
Amazing. Thank you so much for joining me, Susan, and good luck with your travels.
Thank you. Thank you so much. It's been a great chat.
If you loved what you heard, make sure you follow the podcast so you never miss an episode. Or even better, leave us a review. And if you have a bold idea of your own, I'd love to hear from you. Check out the show notes to get in touch.